In this section it starts to get exciting, because we dive into AI agents, AI automations and agentic AI. And we will use the tool n8n in order to do this, because it's a low-code tool. So the first step is obviously to install n8n on your local machine, and we do this globally. You can also do it in Docker if you like. I will show you the interface, obviously also how you can install Node.js so that everything runs smoothly. If you have a Mac, you are also covered. I will show you how you can manage your node versions. I will give you all the basics of n8n. This means triggers, actions, nodes, models, MCP and a lot more. Then we will install Docker, because inside of Docker we will install Supabase. We will use Supabase as a SQL database with tables and also as a vector store. And if we run it in Docker, it makes no problems. Then we will start to build our first AI agent. And this will be a RAG agent. We will also include metadata and do some special stuff that is not really possible in all the other IDs that you saw until yet. Then I want to show you how you can use Supabase tables with SQL as a database. Here you can basically store like email addresses, contacts, maybe also products with prices and a lot more. Everything that is a list should be in SQL. Then we will build an email assistant. This assistant can go on, query your database, search for your contacts and send this contact, for example, a mail if you like to. We need to dive a little bit deeper into prompt engineering specifically for AI agents. You need to craft really good system prompts. And lastly, I want to give you a quick overview of some of the capabilities that you can do. So this section is more for the basics. It's all about understanding the tool n8n, understanding all the installations, and working with a local database. These are the core concepts that you need to understand if you want to build local agentic AI. So I see you obviously in the next video. In this video we will install n8n locally on our machine. With n8n we can make a lot of automations. It's not completely open source, but it has a fair code use license. This means you can use this for your personal projects, but basically you can also set this up in your company and do a lot of automations. The only thing that is not allowed is to white label your applications and try to sell like hosting for n8n or something like this. This right here is the original web page from n8n, but we are interested in the GitHub repo, because in the GitHub repo you will find everything that you need to use. If you actually scroll down a tiny bit, you will find that you have a lot of options how you can install this. But before we do this, I want to show you how much stars n8n has. 150,000 stars, so a lot of people loving this tool. If we scroll down, you see that we have a quick start guide. And the quick start is that you can install this globally on your machine with Node.js. Or, if you are a Docker guy, you can also work with Docker. We will talk about Docker a tiny bit later, because I do think that the easiest and fastest way is to install this globally. But if you have problems like with some other programs that are running on your machine, you can absolutely do this with Docker. If you have already installed a lot of things on your computer, I would assume that you are somehow familiar with Docker. You can simply run this in the terminal. And if you are completely new, please follow the installation with Node.js. Now the first thing that you need to do is to obviously download Node.js, so you can simply follow this link. So before we can install n8n locally, we need to download Node.js. Node.js is this program. Don't worry, you don't need to code or anything else, you just need to download this program. In order to do that, you can simply come on download, and here you need to use the machine that you want to use. For example, a Windows machine. You can either run this yourself, also in Docker, or you can simply press the Windows installer down here, so simply use Windows and download the Windows installer. If you have problems with your Node versions, there is also a workaround, but I want to show you the workaround in the next video. We want to make this as easy as possible. So you simply download the Windows installer for right now, and then we will install actually most of the time the newest version. The current version is version 25.0.0. I have downloaded right now this version. If you simply use the default version, it's guaranteed that it should work. And if you want to use one of the newest version, normally you can shoot for this. Then you will find in your download something like this. You can simply press on it, this thing will open up, and you follow the instructions. So you simply have to press next, you accept, you press next, 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 and so on. Maybe they ask you if you want to also install Chocolatey. This is not necessarily needed, so simply follow these instructions. This should be really easy. As soon as Node.js is installed correctly, you need to come into the Node.js command prompt. So I don't want to install this once again, because obviously I have already installed Node.js on my machine. So as soon as this thing is running, you should find something right here. If you type in Node.js, you will find this Node.js command prompt, and you can open up this command prompt. And what you need to do right now is to simply run this command, npx n8n. So you copy these, you throw it in your terminal, and then you will send it out. This is the quick start how the GitHub repo teaches us it. But I do think that we should do this a tiny bit different, so just wait a moment. On the documentation of n8n you will find actually everything that you can do. So here you can follow every single step. Obviously we use npm, but of course you can also use Docker or your own server setup if you want to. So here you find actually everything, even if you host this like on AWS and so on. We focus on npm right now. Here you also get all the commands, and the command that I like to use is to install this globally. So install it globally with npm. This is the command that I like to use. And the command is npm install n8n-g. So you simply copy this command, and this is exactly the command that you want to run in your terminal. So you simply throw this in and send it out. This will take then a few minutes, and then n8n is installed globally. We use the global installation because I do think this makes a lot of stuff easier, especially if you want to connect later with Docker or something else. So please use this command right here, npm install n8n-g. If you want to have a specific update or a specific version, you can use this command. You can also install it via next, this is not really needed. And then as soon as your installation is done, you can start it either with n8n or with n8n start. So you can simply type in n8n in your terminal. After your installation is done, you type in n8n, you send it out, and then actually n8n will spin up on your machine. This will take a tiny bit because I have a lot of workflows running right here. And in the meantime, I want to show you how you can run updates. Of course, here you can see it. Use npm update-g n8n to update your global installation. I do think that you should do this like roughly once a month, and then you are always completely up to date. If you want to do an update to a specific version, this is the command that you need to use. And then you can also start n8n with a tunnel. Maybe you want to reach your n8n, for example, with a Telegram workflow or with a webhook or with something specific. You can obviously also start n8n with a tunnel. But of course, this is not for production. If you want to have this in production, you need to use, for example, a ngrok tunnel or something else. So this is just for playing around a tiny bit. Actually, we will skip this at least for right now. And that's basically everything that you need to use. The first thing is that you install Node.js via this webpage. If you have problems, you are covered in the next lecture. And then you simply run these two commands. The first command is npm install n8n-g. As soon as the code is finished, you run n8n or start n8n in your terminal. And if you want to make updates, this is the code for you. And right now you see that I am like nearly done. I have a lot of workflows, just like I told you. And as soon as everything is completely done, you can press O on your keyboard, and then this thing should spin up. Boom, there it is. And everything that you have to do is to make an account here. I obviously have an account, so I can simply press sign in, and then I should be in my instance. And it will look something like this for you, but most likely you will not have any instances here running. But of course we will create some instances. Before we create something, I want to show you the interface, at least a tiny bit. In the next lectures we dive of course deeper. First you have here the overview. This is basically this interface. You have here the production executions, the failed executions, the failure rate, the time saved, and the runtime on average. Here under workflows you find the workflows that you have already generated. Then under credentials, you will find the credentials that you have connected. I have connected ConfUI, I have connected OpenWebUI, Gmail, and a lot more. Then you will find the executions. And here you will find the executions where you got success and also the executions where you got errors. Here I also have some errors included because I wanted to test a few things. Then you will also find the data tables. You can use these data tables directly from n8n, but I do think it's better to use Supabase for these data tables. But you can also run with these data tables directly from n8n. It makes it a bit easier. But I do think Supabase is the solution that works for a lot of people better, especially if they want to scale. Then on the left side you find here personal, and this is basically nearly the same thing as overview. The only thing that is excluded here are, of course, here the last executions from the last few days. Here on the right you can actually press create workflow, and then you are in an interface that looks something like this. Here you find the editor. In the editor you can create the workflows, you find the executions that run through in this specific interface, and then you also find the evaluations. And you always get nice little tips directly from n8n. So simply watch their videos if you are stuck somewhere. Then of course, here on the plus side, you can add notes to the canvas, but we will look at this of course in more detail. I just want to give you a high-level overview. Now I want to show you some of the coolest things, because on the left side you can press on templates. We leave without saving right now. And here you can use a lot of templates. They have some recommended templates for you. So all call summary to HubSpot, for example, or here an email agent and so on. But I want to close this down. Here you find pre-built agents. If you want to use Telegram, you can use on this, for example, and then you will actually get a complete agent that is built. So you don't have to do this from scratch. And here you also get some videos directly from n8n. You can simply watch them, and then they will explain you the whole workflow in detail. I do think this is a really great feature. So simply take a look. If you want to automate your emails, you get an automation, and everything is explained in a nice little detail. This is completely awesome. So I don't have to explain you like every single step, because also n8n does a great job. Then you will find here the tutorial templates, so they show you how JSON works, how you can build your first AI agents, how expressions work, how the workflow logic works, and they show you the API fundamentals. So if you are completely new, you can also watch this video. I don't assume that you need to watch them. If you watch my next lectures, you are also completely covered. But what's really cool is this right here. You can press on view all templates, and here we will actually find over 6,000 different templates, and most of them are completely for free. You can simply search for the stuff that you want to do. Maybe you want to do a little bit of sales or support or document operations or ID ops or whatever. You can press on these things, and then you can see that you will find a lot of different workflows. Everything that you have to do is to simply press on them. Here is something for CRM. If you press on the workflow, you will get the complete workflow, and this workflow is completely for free and has nice instructions. If you press use for free, you can import this, for example, on your local host, so simply press on it. You saw that I have a few n8n instances, and then you can simply either connect your credentials right here, or you can skip it, and you have the whole workflow included. So this is really awesome. You don't have to build every single thing from scratch, because n8n really helps us. But obviously you can also import this in other instances. Like I told you, I have some instances of n8n running. If I close this down, and if I come back once again for a tiny moment, we can come here on variables. If you already have some variables, you can include them here, but here you need an enterprise plan, and I don't have this. Then you can come also on insights. These are the same insights as from overview. Then you get the help guide with a quick starter guide, the whole documentation. Here is a course. This is a course in text form. You can also read yourself right here, and you can report a bug if you want to. And then here you have what's new, so all the updates. Here you see, for example, the data tables. They are relatively new, and that's basically the standard interface. And right now I want to show you something else that is also really cool. If I come in my n8n instance that runs directly in the cloud service from n8n, you also get this workflow builder. So here you can build with AI. If you press on these, you see that you can actually press on multi-agent research workflow, for example, and you can send this out and you can build your agents by prompts. I would assume that sooner or later this will also work on your local machine, and then you have to connect, for example, your local Olama. But for right now, this is only in the cloud version available. But like I told you, I really hope that we also get this on our local instances. Because right now n8n actually pays for the API calls, and that's why we need to pay for the hosting, of course. So if you work locally, you will not have this feature. I just want to give you a brief overview. Basically what happens is that n8n creates this workflow automatically from scratch with an LLM for me. We will create a multi-agent workflow where different AI agents collaborate to research a topic, fact-check the information, and compile comprehensive reports. And here you see that the agent should be like nearly done right now. And boom, there we have it. Right now we can execute and refine in order to test this out, but I would assume that this thing is working, and if you press right here, you can also see that basically also the prompts are included for these AI agents, so even the system prompts are working here correctly. But like I told you, this is just if you use the hosted version of NRN directly. If you see this thing right here, built with AI, this is this feature. If you self-host this, at least at the moment, and you press create workflow, you will not have this feature. But I would assume this will get included. That's why I wanted to include it also in this video. And what we do is, of course, we take a closer look in the next video if you have problems with your versions from Node.js, and then we will actually start to build workflows. I want to give you a good overview how generally NRN is working, and then we will build cool automations that work locally on our machine. Real quick, if you are a Mac guy, of course you are covered too. You can install NRN really easy. Enter the following commands in the terminal and confirm with your Mac password. It should be really that easy. First you download Node, as you already know, and then you type in sudo npm install -g NRN instead of npm install -g NRN. So the only thing that you need to add is sudo right here. And then you need to wait a tiny bit. So wait until the installation is complete and you can start, of course, your NRN. To update your NRN globally, you use sudo npm update -g, of course. And to start your NRN, you use sudo nrn start. And you can open it, of course, on this URL. So, of course, you are also covered if you have a Mac. If you have problems with the installation of NRN, it's most likely to the right Node version. Or if you are not admin, you need to make two things sure. First, you need to be admin on your local machine, and second, you need to have the right version of Node. Generally speaking, the newest version of Node should work, normally. So version 23.8.0 should work. But also other versions work. It depends a little bit. Sometimes also the newest version can bug a little bit. I want to show you what version I am using and how you can install these versions. Now first, please install NVM for Windows just like I have shown you in the previous video. So simply go on this download and use the NVM setup zip. Then we open up the Node.js command prompt and here you can type in NVM list and you will see what versions are installed on your local machine. I have installed 23.8.0, 20.16.0 and also an older version 18.20.5. And if you want to install a version, I would really recommend you to install this version. And everything that you have to do is to type in these lines. NVM install and then you type in the number. So basically 20.16.0. I want to install an older version. So I want to install, for example, 22.14.0. And then we send this out. This will be relatively fast, and as soon as this is installed, it will look something like this. And then you see also this, with NVM use, you can use this version. So NVM use, let's just say 22.14.0 and we send this out. And now I am using this version. And in order to control this, I can type in NVM list once again, and this thing with the star is working currently. So please install 20.16.0. This works for me right now. It is totally possible that you need to play with these versions a little bit. Maybe the newest version will work for you, and if it does not want to work, just use this version. So I want to use right now, once again, this right here, NVM use 20.16.0, we send it out. One last test, NVM list. And you see I am using this version right now, and this version makes no problems for me, and I am relatively sure this will also work for you. In this video we need to talk about the basics of an NRN. Because if you see workflows like this, the chances are relatively high that you don't understand them. Yes, of course, you can generate a lot of really hard stuff, big stuff. You can include code notes, you can use HTTP requests and a lot more. But I do think that you should always understand the basics before you start building something that is a little bit harder. And for this course, we don't really need to build such gigantic workflows. You can obviously just use templates directly from NRN. The first thing that I would recommend you to do is, of course, to come into your NRN, the thing that you have installed locally. And if you press on create workflow, you will be in empty canvas that look just like this. And in this empty canvas, I want to show you all the basics. We will also take a small look at the model context protocol in this video, but later, of course, we will build our own application so that you understand it in detail. So this is a high-level overview so that you understand the platform. The first thing that you always need is, of course, a trigger. You can either press here on the right side on this plus and this thing will appear, or you can obviously also press on this plus sign right here. So you can press on it and you can add whatever trigger you want. Let's just use this manual trigger. Now first, how this generally works. If we come back, for example, into this thing right here so that we can paint a little bit like little children, in n8n we always have like at minimum 2 steps. We always have step 1, and step 1 is always a trigger. And step 2 is always a action. Now what do I mean by this? A trigger can be whatever. It can be a chat trigger. It can be a manual clicking. It can be a non-form submission. It even can be something from ads. So this trigger can be whatever you want. It can be a mail, it can be a Google Sheets, it can be whatever you can think of. And as soon as this trigger occurs, some kind of action should occur. So let's just say as soon as a mail comes in, an action should occur, and the action could, for example, be that you want to answer to this mail. Or most likely, if you want to build RAG applications, an action could be, for example, a Google trigger. And let's just say Google Drive. As soon as you upload something into Google Drive, the action that you want to create should be, for example, that the stuff from Google Drive will get stored automatically in a bind.conv vector database as action. And if we talk about RAG chatbots, so this is, for example, for upserting stuff in a vector database. If we talk about RAG applications, we would, for example, have, of course, a chat trigger. The chat trigger would, for example, trigger then the action, and the action would be, for example, an AI agent with RAG. So you always need to have some sort of trigger and some sort of action will occur. You also have the possibility to make a trigger that is immediately a MCP server. So also MCP server can be a trigger. But then of course we need to trigger these MCP servers either from n8n with a client node or from outside with, for example, Cloud Desktop or whatever. So if you use a trigger inside of n8n that is a MCP server, we need to trigger this trigger node from outside, either from n8n or from a different host. And if you are here in n8n, you see that you have, for example, this thing as a trigger. And if you press on it, so test workflow, you see that this trigger got right now executed. So this thing will always get executed as soon as you click. But of course you have a lot more. You have the on-app events. And here you have a gigantic amount of things that you can include. You can include Airtable. So you can, for example, trigger something as soon as a new Airtable event occurs. If you work with AWS, congratulations, you can also trigger out from AWS. You can also trigger out from Box, from Bubble. You can use a normal chat trigger, so this chat trigger is really easy. As soon as you type in something here, you see, you can simply trigger via chat, similarly than in Flowwise. You can trigger via ClickUp, CoinGecko if you are a crypto guy, DeepL, Drift, Dropbox. You can use different email triggers. You can use Facebook Leads Ad as trigger, or generally Facebook, so everything on Facebook, also Instagram stuff. Git, GitHub, GitLab, Google Ads or Google Analytics. The Google Calendar could also be a trigger. Google Docs, Google Drive and Google Sheets, these are triggers that I love. And basically you see that you can trigger with nearly everything that you can think of. And you can also trigger with different HTTP request nodes, more on that later. You can also trigger with Shopify if you have an online store, with Superbase, with Stripe, really with whatever you want. Besides that, you have an unscheduled trigger. And if you press on unscheduled, of course you can schedule these triggers. Let's just say you want to have that every single hour this thing gets executed. Or let's just say every single second this should get executed. You can come down to 1 second and this trigger will trigger actually every single second or every minute. Or every day at midnight or 1 AM or whatever you want. If you use this, for example, you need to make sure that you come here on settings. This is really important. You press on settings and you need to make sure that you are on your right time zone. So if you work with time triggers, you need to make sure that you work with the right time zones. Besides this scheduled trigger, you can use more, like you guessed it. What you can also use is on webhook call. Now what the hell is this? It looks something like this, and this on webhook call is something really cool, and we need to talk about this later, because we can also talk to this application via other applications. This is a webhook, and we can include this webhook, for example, into ChatGPT or into Flowwise, and we can trigger this action or this workflow that is behind this trigger from other applications. And later in the course we will obviously also work with webhooks, because we can use a webhook trigger to connect NADN to OpenWebUI. With OpenWebUI you have a local ChatGPT clone. Besides this, we can also use the model context protocol that I have just told you, and we can connect the MCP server from NADN, for example, to LM Studio. So with these webhooks and MCP servers, we can do a lot of interesting stuff. I do think that MCP and also webhooks are powerful tools inside of NADN. You can basically connect whatever you want. You can use a non-form submission. So people or you can simply type in different stuff, and then this thing gets triggered. You can also use when executed by another workflow. This is also relatively cool. I want to give you a brief overview, just that you know what you are getting into. If we come to personal once again, you can see, for example, this workflow. And here we have, for example, this Gmail tool. And this Gmail tool triggers the sub workflow mails. So it's basically this workflow. So you can trigger from one agent this agent. This is a sub-agent that works behind this other agent. I know it's a little bit confusing right now, don't worry, we will get into all of this. Let's just delete this thing right now once again. I just want to give you a broad overview. Then of course on chat message, so this is your simple chat trigger, you already know it. And lastly, you also have other ways. You can use an email trigger, error trigger, MCP server trigger, NADN, and also the SSE trigger. So you basically see you have a lot of different triggers. Now once again, let's just press add first step, and we use, for example, the on-chat message. As soon as you have found the right node that you want to use, of course you can give this a name. Let's just say test. And of course you should press save so that this thing gets not deleted if you are not careful. Then besides this, you have here the editor and the executions. And here on these executions, you will always find the executions that you have made. Previously, we have executed like this tiny thing here, but later, as soon as you execute more and more and more things, of course, you can monitor this here. And if you come to the editor, you can actually edit these things. And of course, if you want to send this as active, you can press right here, press got it, and then this thing is active also for other people, but for testing purpose, you will always have this at inactive. Then the next thing, as soon as you have a trigger, of course, an action needs to occur. Right now we trigger via chat. And something that you can use, for example, as an action is, for example, an AI agent. If we simply press on AI agent, I know this is really simple right now. You can see for yourself that we will trigger this AI agent with this chat. So you can always see the stuff that is right here in it. Source for prompt, the user prompt, it's the connected chat trigger node. And the prompt user is this format that comes here through. And we do not want to have any specific output. It's relatively easy to understand. But every time, as soon as something is red and as soon as you see these red stars, you need to connect stuff. And of course you know it. On the AI agent node, you need to connect a chat model. So you press actually plus. We would connect, for example, the OpenAI chat model. You can also use OpenRouter or whatever. You simply connect your credentials from OpenAI. So make your OpenAI API key. I hope that you understand how to do this. You can simply use it, and then you can use a model from the list. I just use GPT-4o Mini for this generic test. And of course, as soon as we start to build these applications, we will work with local OLAMA models. You don't have to use APIs. This is just a generic example. And now our trigger is chat, and our action is this AI agent, and this AI agent will do the stuff that we're typing in, of course, in this thing here. So if we simply type in hey, of course, this AI agent will get triggered and it will simply talk back to us just like a normal agent. But you need to understand that you can also trigger this agent via mail. So as soon as if you get a mail, for example, an agent could go on with this workflow. And lastly, of course, you can also connect other stuff. Also here you can connect, for example, Gmail. For example, send message. So you can also send messages right here into Gmail. You can also trigger via mail, an agent writes and then send messages. You can also press on tools, and on these tools you can also connect, like for example a Gmail tool, and also here you can use the operation send and a lot more. So please, this thing is really gigantic. You can do a lot. And you also see memory. You can use a simple memory, for example. And this would be a really simple agent. And on every single node that you see here, you can always zoom in and you can see for yourself that you can press play on this first button. You can press here in order to activate it or deactivate it. You can delete it, and you can also press on these three dots. You can open it, you can press test step, you can rename it, you can deactivate it, sometimes you can pin, you can copy it, you can tidy up your workflow, you can select all, and you can clear your selection. And you always see here the shortcuts that you can use. And this works basically on every single node. You can also copy all of this, for example, and then throw this once again down here. The only thing that it did not work here is we cannot use twice the same chat trigger in one single workflow. But if you came in a new workflow, of course, you can include all of this. And now I want to show you what's going on under the hood. If we press open chat once again, and I just type in hey, for example, you can see how your data flows to different stuff. If I close this down, you can always press on this first node. And here on the left side, you see what's happening. So right now, make chat publicly available. I will talk about this later. But what was the output of this node? The output was a session ID. The action was send message, and the chat input was hey. And then you can also see here on the right side that it got into the agent. So you can press on this agent. And also here you see on the left side the input, in the middle is the AI agent, and on the right side the output. So on the first node we have here basically the input and the output. If you go on, we have the input, we have the agent node, and we have the output. And you see what was basically the input to our agent. The input was the prompt user message, and the prompt user message is right here, json.chat_input. And you see here it's basically exactly this chat input. This is always a variable. So basically this variable is just here wrote in. We can also map this manually later. And because I sent here hey, of course this AI agent will talk back to me, and the output is right now, of course, hello, how can I assist you today? Here on the left side on this input, you can also always come to table, and you can also see this JSON format, and it then always communicates basically with a JSON format. And in the middle ground, you will always find this node. You can also come to settings, and if you come on parameters, most likely you will find add options, and you can add system messages just like you know. And lastly, on the right side, you find the output, and also the output here you find the schema, and you can map this schema later. You will find a table, and you will find the JSON, and basically it then always communicates with this JSON. And if you press on logs, you can also see exactly how this JSON was processed. It's relatively easy to understand as soon as you get it, but I completely understand that maybe it's a little bit much right now, because we can always work with these things like however we want. If you would, for example, delete this chat flow here for a brief moment, and you use, for example, another trigger, let's just say the on-form submission, and on the on-form submission you can use, for example, the form title, and then the form description, and then here you can also add a little bit of stuff with the placeholders and so on, and then you can press test step. You see that you can add a on-form submission, you can press submit, and then this data also flows relatively similarly. And also this data needs to get processed, for example, into the AI agent. So if we press test workflow once again, for example, and we submit this data will come through, and right now it will not work because here on these parameters we have the user prompt as chat input, and if you come to the schema, right now we have this form mode. So you would most likely press here on defined below, and here you can come to expression and throw this stuff right here in. And if you press that step right now, we have the input and we have also the output. And if you come on the output, it looks like you're testing the functionality and so on, because this was of course just a test. So you can simply see for yourself how this data flows. For right now, it's not that important. I will show you in every single video how you can do this step by step. But I want that you understand that you can map every single data point here manually. One last time, I just want to delete this, and I add once again the on chat message, and as soon as we have added the on-chat message. Of course, we need not only define this below, we can for example connect chat trigger node and we have once again the input. And if we open this back up and type in hey, of course our data will also flow once again perfectly through it. And if you come on executions, you can always see the executions that got through and also the executions that did not get through. You see here that we had for example an error because the on-form submission was not right. And right now, everything seems to work perfectly. If we come back once again in this editor, you saw already that we can come to this message and we can also make this chat publicly available. And here we have the chat URL. And the mode is for example a hosted chat without any authentication. And in order to see how all of this is looking, you can simply copy this URL. And you would throw this, for example, in an empty browser, and right now it is not working. And I have to tell you why it's not working. It's not working because this chat flow is right now inactive. If you want to access this, of course it needs to be active. So got it. Then you need to save this stuff. It is saved up right now. Then we come back once again. Then you can copy this chat URL once again. And if you throw it in right now, you will have an interface that you can chat with, and here you have like the welcome message, my name is Nathan and so on. And of course you can make this a little bit nicer looking, but we need to talk about this later. Right now it makes no sense, because generally speaking in this video I just wanted to show you some basics here. You need to remember what we need to have in n8n always. We always need to have first a trigger and second an action that needs to occur. The trigger can be anything. It can be Gmail, Google Sheets, chat input, on-form submission, every single app that you can think of. And also the action can be basically whatever you want. You can map your stuff manually. It can be an AI agent, but also the action can be whatever you want. And these are right now just some basics. You can also add tools, memory, and a lot more. And please don't be sad if you do not understand it yet. This will make more sense over the next video, I promise. And especially if we work with MCPs, this MCP server trigger is a node that is really easy to work with, because you can simply communicate to this node and here you can throw some tools on it. On the other hand, if you work for example with an AI agent and you type in this agent, and here on tools you can also add MCP. If you type in MCP, you see that we can use the MCP client tool. So this is how you can make a client, and the other thing was of course a MCP server. So you can create MCP server and MCP clients in one workflow, and these two things can also communicate with each other. Our trigger would be for example chat, then the AI agent would do the heavy lifting for us. It will call the client, and then the client could communicate with the server. But this server can also be connected to every single other client that you want. That's the beauty of n8n. And don't worry if you don't understand it yet. As soon as we build out this application, it will get clearer and clearer with every single video. But you need to have a nice overview before you start with this tool. In this video we will install Docker. Docker is really cool. Basically you can simply come on this web page. But before we install Docker, I want to basically show you what Docker is. If this is your computer and you have a lot of programs on your computer, it can be that these programs like interfere with each other. So maybe this program interferes with this one because the versions are a bit different. They can eventually interfere with each other. And now comes Docker. What does Docker do? We will install Supabase in the next video. And Docker basically makes a container around Supabase. This will basically secure Supabase so that it does not interfere with all these other programs. It makes a Docker container around it. And in this Docker container is simply, let's just call it the recipe, so that you can run Supabase. So you can think of Docker just like a recipe provider. Docker will handle everything for you. It will spin up a container, and this container is on your PC, but it will not interfere with all the other stuff that you have installed on your computer. That's basically Docker. And now I want to show you how you can install Docker. You can simply come on this webpage, docker.com, and here you press download Docker Desktop. You can either download it, of course, for Mac with the Apple Silicon chips. You can download it for Mac with the Intel chips. You can download it for Windows with AMD. You can download it for Windows with ARM. And you can also obviously download it for Linux. So simply press on the thing that is right for you. For me it would be most likely Windows with AMD, so you simply press on it, This thing will take right now a minute. As soon as the download is through, you can simply press on it. Then this thing will pop up and you simply follow the installation. This will be really easy. I have obviously already installed this. That's why I want to close this down. Sooner or later you will have something like this on your PC. And you can double click on it. Then the Docker engine is starting. Most likely this thing will be empty for you. You see that I have OpenWebUI running right here. I can also pause this. You see that I already have Supabase installed. I have N8N with ngrok installed. I have some installations here and here on images. You find obviously a lot more. But don't worry if this thing is empty for you. We will install every single thing step by step. The general interface is here relatively easy. Here on the left side you find the containers. Here you can basically search for the recipes that you want to install. Then here on images you can basically do the same thing. You can search for example for the N8N image and you can also install N8N right here. Here you find the volumes that are running. And basically everything else is not really needed for us. The last thing that we also need in the next video is this terminal down here. You can basically press on this terminal and you can also run some code in this terminal. But don't worry, you can simply copy a few lines right here. So basically what we did is we installed the Docker. With Docker you can run a lot of programs and they will not interfere with other software that is on your computer. You can spin a Docker container up on a specific port and in the next video we will install Supabase on Docker, so that everything runs smoothly, because we need Supabase as a database inside of an N8N. If you want to run everything locally, you have to do this, because I think Supabase is one of the best vector databases and also SQL databases. In this video we will install Supabase on our local machine. Here we are on the web page of Supabase. And Supabase is super cool, because you can use vector databases, you can use normal databases, so SQL and a lot more. This is the web page, so you can also start your projects right in the web. But what we are interested is of course to set this up locally. You see, you have also a GitHub repo, because Supabase is open source. This has 90,000 stars on GitHub, so a lot of people are using this project. And you get also a whole documentation here and you can follow the documentation, but we do this really simple. We just want to install this in Docker and then we will simply use it as a database. In order to install Supabase in Docker, you can come of course into your Docker desktop, so make sure to open this up. Then what you do next is to simply copy these 4 lines that I give you. So run the following 4 lines one after another in the terminal. The terminal is obviously down here, so you press right here. And what you would do is of course to simply copy the first line, insert it down here and then you send it out. So simply press enter, send it out, and with this first line we simply git clone Supabase from GitHub. As soon as this is done, you use the second line. Here we simply point at Supabase/Docker, so we change the directory. Next, we make a .env example, and lastly we spin our container up. So simply run these 4 commands one after another, and then everything should be installed. Down here you also have some additional commands that you normally don't need. For restart, first of all of course we point to the right Docker container and then we type in docker compose up-d. So you can simply copy this command. To stop this Docker container you use this. So basically once again we point to the right directory and then docker compose down, and to check the status we simply do cd supabase/docker and then docker compose ps. These are the commands that you need, but like I told you, you simply need to run these 4 commands one after another, and as soon as these commands are running you will have this thing down here. Let me show you. This thing will be included. Normally it should also run. If it doesn't run you simply press start down here, so that your container will basically spin up. And then you can see everything that works in Supabase. So if you press here, you will see that you spin up a lot of stuff here. This will take a tiny moment, but then Supabase should work. Docker will do all the heavy lifting for you. Docker will spin up the container. Inside the container Supabase is installed, and the port that we use is lastly this localhost 8000. On this port is basically everything installed that we need. So if you simply press right here, this thing should pop up and also the password should be included completely automatically. So you simply sign in right here and then you will be in your own local Supabase instance. If you have problems, With your username or password, it should be always this thing as the default value. The user should be Supabase and the password should be this password is unsecure and should be updated. And of course, if you want to make this safe, you need to update this password. But if you just use it locally on your own machine for testing purposes, it's also completely fine to simply use this default password. I believe you hear everything as it is so that you have it really easy. And as soon as this thing is installed, you can basically do a lot of things. Here on the left side you see that you have a table editor, and on this table editor you see that I have already a vector database included. Here you see the metadata, the embeddings and so on. Besides this, we have also some tables that we can use with names, so here you see for example my name table and a lot more. What we will use is of course just a vector database and a normal table, so this will be relatively easy. And I'll see you of course in the next one, because in the next one we bring everything together. We will build an AI agent inside of an n8n and we will connect it to Supabase and use Supabase as a vector database. In this video we will build actually this workflow. This is a two-part workflow. The first part on the left side is an AI agent that runs with Ollama, that has a simple chat memory so that it understands what you are talking about, and it uses a Supabase vector database and we use an Ollama embeddings model. And the second part is actually to upload or insert your data in your Supabase vector store. And here we obviously also use the Ollama embeddings models and a default data loader. We will do this step by step so that you understand how all of this is working. So we come on personnel, we leave this without saving, and then we press create workflow. The first thing that you should use is basically an AI agent. This should be really easy. So boom, there's our AI agent and we trigger this by chat. Now the next thing is obviously an AI model, and we use, as you know, Ollama because we want to run everything locally. So you simply press on Ollama. It's basically this Ollama chat model, and you have most likely not an account yet. You see that I am already connected, but I want to show you how you can connect yourself, so I simply press create new credentials. Everything that you have to do is to give the base URL, and basically you don't need any API key. If you don't know your base URL, you simply open up a terminal, you type in Ollama surf, and you should already understand that this is basically your URL. And you see HTTP localhost 11434. It's basically completely correct. So what we want to do is to simply press save right now. I call this for example course test, and let's just see. Boom, it failed. Now why did this fail? I will show you. n8n basically does something interesting. They simply call this localhost, but in our Ollama this is called this thing here. You should already see this. What you can do is to simply copy this and then of course include this down here. So we throw it in. Right now we press save and boom, right now it's green, so everything seems to work. As soon as this is connected you can use models. This can take a tiny bit until it works. Right now you see it works. We can use for example the DeepSeek model, the Gemma model, the GPT OSS model or a Qwen model. I simply press on this Qwen model. And right now, if I press save here, and let's just call also this Supabase reg course test. Right now also this should work. So if we open this chat, I can basically type in hey, and then this thing will actually understand, or basically it should simply answer. And it tells me, hello, how can I assist you today? So this seems to work. Now we want to include memory. Before we include memory, I want to show you why we use memory. Let's just do something like this. My name is Arnie. Right now the model should answer, maybe it greets me with Arnie. Hi Arnie, nice to meet you, and so on. And see what I am doing right now. For example, I like pizza. Obviously the model will answer once again, and then I will ask something like this. What is my name? Yes, pizza is delicious and so on, but let's just see what happens if I ask about my name. This thing don't understand my name. That's why we use memory. So you can simply press plus, And here you have a few options right now. You can either use a simple memory, but you could also use a Postgres chat memory. Because we use Supabase, you can also use Postgres. To make this easy, we use the simple memory. And on this simple memory, we simply use the JSON.SessionID as the session key. And here you see the context window length. It should basically remember for 5 messages about what stuff we are talking about. And I want to show you that this thing is working. We save it. I type basically the same thing in. I type in my name is Arnie. I wait for the response. Then I send out, for example, I like pizza. I wait for the response. And lastly, I will type in once again, what is my name? And I would expect that this thing understands right now my name, because obviously it will use the simple memory. So I send this out, boom. And then I'm relatively sure that this thing will look up in its memory and it will understand that my name is Arnie, because it should basically know from the previous messages what's my name. Your name is Arnie, boom. I remember this from our conversation. How can I assist you today, and so on. And if you come on the right side, you can also see obviously always the logs. You see basically that we use the simple memory with the tokens, then we use the chat-o-llama model, and then once again the simple memory. So you can obviously monitor everything right here. You can see every single answer. The next thing that we obviously need is a tool. And with these tools we want to use first of all a vector database. Later we can include a lot more. As you know, we can include Gmail and a lot more. But what we want to use is of course the Supabase vector store. So we need to press on Supabase vector store. And this thing is a little bit of a pain to set up. You obviously see that I am already connected with this account. So if I press here, I am already connected. But I need to show you how you can connect to this because yeah, this is a bit painful. So what we do is right now we create new credentials. And here you need the host and the service role secret key. Now the host is easy. You can come on Supabase because you have already installed this locally. This works in Docker, this is no problem. Right now you come on the left side. And on the left side you come on API docs. And here you will find the Supabase URL. This is basically your local host. You can simply copy this right here. It runs on port 8000. You also saw this basically in Docker. If we come here in Docker, you see that this listens to port 8000. But you can obviously also find it here. Then of course you can simply include this, boom, HTTP localhost 8000. And now we need to use our service role secret. And if you come back of course into Docker, you see that the Supabase key is in the process.env. And where do you find this? I will show you. You need to come to your machine. Most likely it's under user. Your name. Now you need to search for Supabase. For me it's down here. Inside of Supabase you need to search for Docker. This thing. And in Docker you have a .env file. So you double press on the .env file. This opens right now, at least for me, with VS Code. It will open with some kind of code editor. So simply open it. And here you will actually find every single thing that you need. You will find the Postgres password. You can use this if you want to use Postgres. This dashboard username and the dashboard password, that's basically also the stuff that I gave you in the last video. That's where I got this data from. And what you need to use right now is the service role secret. So you need to copy this entire key here. This is a long key. So copy this key and then you need to throw this into your N8N down here. You delete this. We insert this right here. Then we press save and boom, right now it's green. You can also call this course test and boom, save once again. And now you maybe ask yourself, why do I show you these things? Because obviously this runs only on my machine, so no worries. If some people see this, yeah, it's no problem because this runs only locally. I only use this for testing purposes. And I will also delete this after this course. So if you close this down right now, you are basically connected with the Supabase vector store. And what we need to do right now is to set a description, but we need to do this later. Because before we can basically search stuff from our vector database, obviously we need to include an embeddings model and we need to upsert data. Because before we can do retrieval, we need to upload stuff. The first thing is obviously the embeddings model because I want that these red things go away here. Oh, you already understand the OLAMA. And on these models, you already saw these embeddings models. You know how the embeddings work. Right now, you can use either the embeddings from Google Gemma. they work really nice, but what I like to do is to use these Noemic embed text models. They are really easy to use, they work great, and they don't need a lot of VRAM. If you press on them, they are actually really small. So you can simply copy these, you come in your terminal, and you run this command, olama pull Noemic embed text. I have already done this. That's why I don't have to run this command. Then you come back in your NLN, you come on these embeddings models, you press plus, and we use of course the OLAM embeddings models. And here we use the model that we have downloaded, or at least that you will download, this Noemic embed text models. Boom! Right now we have our first rec application basically done. But of course this only works if we upsert data. So the next thing that we need to do is to upsert data. And here we have a lot of options. I want to show you first some of the easiest options. What we want to use here is our on-form submission. So you press plus, we want to have another trigger, and we use our on-form submission for another trigger. We just use the test URL right here. We give this form a title. Let's just say data for rec. Then the form description if you want to. I just call this test, come on, this doesn't really matter. Then we want to add the elements, what we want to upsert here, let's just call this data. Then the element type, for me it's not text, I just want to make a generic example with a PDF, but obviously you can upload other files or whatever you want. In the best case you would make markdown and use text right here, because I am lazy, I just want to use some PDFs, come on. So we use file. And we accept here multiple files, for example. And this should be a required field. This is basically our trigger. So if we open chat, we can chat with this agent on the left side. And if we press execute workflow, boom, this thing will open up. And here you can basically upload your data. But this will take a moment, because of course we need to connect everything. So the next thing that we want to do is to press plus. What I want to do right now is I want to convert data. So I want to convert binary data to JSON. In order to use this node is called extract, I do think. Extract from file. And here we use extract from PDF, because I want to upload PDFs. This should basically work right now. And right now we simply make a test. So execute workflow, I search something from my PC. Let's just use this chain of draft paper and we press submit. Right now the data flows through, but something is red. Let's just see. If we press on these, my input binary field is here called data, but I call it here, yeah, basically, it's just written big. So we delete this, boom, right now we insert it, we press execute step. And right now we have everything basically as JSON. So this seems to work perfectly. We have our entire data here as nice JSON format, and we can use this in order to train on a rec application. So our PDF gets extracted and we have JSON. And right now we want to upload this JSON obviously in a vector database. So we press plus, we use once again Supabase. It's of course the Supabase vector store, and this time it's add document to vector stores. And of course you need to connect yourself. I do think we have used this course test right here. The operation is insert documents, and now you need to use a table. Obviously I already have some tables, but you have most likely none, and that's why we need to make a table. In order to make this you come on these documentations. Then you can scroll down a tiny bit, and we come here to this quick starter for vector stores. What you will find here is for Supabase this SQL code, and you need to copy this whole SQL code. And then you come on your Supabase account. And on Supabase you can simply come to your SQL editor, and in your SQL editor you have to insert this code. So you delete the old one and you insert this code. Boom. And in this code you can basically see what we are doing. We create an extension vector, the create table for these documents. We also include the content as text. We use some metadata. And here this is right now important. Embedding vector. If you use 1536 here, this is for the OpenAI embeddings. And here stands also change if needed. And that's basically also what we need to do. We need to change this because these Noemic embed models don't work with these dimensions. We need to change the dimensions. The dimension that our model is using are basically 7, 6, 8. So type them in here and also type them in here. Delete this and type in 7, 6, 8. This is really important because if you don't do this, this will not work. If you use OpenAI embeddings, obviously you can simply leave them. After you have done this, you can simply press run right here. I have to tell you something. I have already here a vector database that is called documents. That's why I will change this a tiny bit, but don't worry, this will work for you. My code is basically this right here. I just made a tiny change here. I called this vector database course, and I also added some German comments here. So we simply press run right now. Right now you see this is running, and I do think this should work. Boom, success, no rows returned. So as soon as this is done, you can basically come back, you can press on database, and on database we have right now our new database. You see, I have here a table. I have here course, I have here names, or Namen in German, and I have documents. So this thing right here, this course, this is the database that we have created right now. And you can also come on the left side on this table editor. Now on the left side you navigate to course, and you see that we have a completely new vector database, so this is empty. We have no content because the content is text, we have no metadata, we have no vector embeddings, we have nothing. We can either import this from a CSV, but what we want to do obviously is to upload this from our NADN. That's why we come back to NADN. Inside of NADN we use here insert documents, as you know, and right now we need to use our new database. The new database should be called course, and if this is not working, we simply press save because we need to wait for a moment. Let's just see. Right now we have it, so we press on course. Boom. Here the embedding batch size. We always send 200 batches at once. This is completely fine. And right now we also need to connect this thing down here. Boom. I do think this should work. What we also need right now is of course the embeddings models. We use once again the OLAM embeddings. And here we use the Noemic embed models, as you already understand. The next thing is that we want to have a document loader, so we press right here and we simply use the default data loader. Obviously, you can also do something special here. You can do like special splitting. If you come on custom, you can use different splittings. If you leave it at simple, we split on every 1000 characters with 200 characters as overlap. So you can leave this at simple for right now, and if you want to do fancy stuff, of course you can do fancy stuff, you already understand this. So you can simply press on custom if you want to, and then this thing will change and you can use, for example, a character text splitter or a recursive character text splitter, and here you can also change the size and the overlap by hand if you want to. So if you want to do something special, you can simply do this, and if not, simply use this default data loader and leave it at simple. Boom. Right now I do think that we should have basically everything included. On this default data loader, of course, we leave the type of data at JSON because obviously we extract the JSON from here. If you press right here, you can press execute step and then this thing will upload. But of course I want to show you how you can do this by scratch. So you simply press execute workflow. You search for your documents. I use this chain of draft. Then I press submit. I want to show you this basically also in the background. Let's just wait. Submit. Then this thing should run through and it will get inserted in our vector database. Right now I can close this. If I come on my database right here, boom, there you see it. Here you find basically the content with the metadata and the vector embeddings. So everything got included right here, and I do think this is completely perfect. If you want to see a specific chunk, you can simply double press here and you can see the whole chunk. So this is the chunk number 19, this is chunk number 17. You can also delete by hand different chunks if you don't need a specific chunk. For example, this one right here would not be really necessary, so you can delete it, but I just want to make this simple. I just leave it how it is. Right now we can come back in NADN, we save this, and what we do right now is of course to come back on this vector database, and here we use of course from list, course, and now a description. When should we use this vector database? Use this tool for a question about COD. So for the chain of draft prompting, we press save. Obviously you will make most likely something like for your company with specific data, because this is a chatbot that you can give internally to different people by, obviously you know it, by simply making this public and sending them this chat. Then you have everything working. What I want to do right now is one simple test. We simply press open chat and we ask something for COD. For example, What is COD? We triggered our vector store search and we will get our answer in a minute. And now you basically see the answer. What is COD prompting? COD prompting stands for chain of draft. This is of course knowledge where the LLM is not trained on. And here on the right side you can see the embeddings that got searched. We basically searched the Supabase vector store. We did a few search queries, I'm not actually sure why. If you have a little bit of problems right here, I want to show you something, because you can also use metadata and you don't have to include basically this extract from PDF file. You can also throw normal data in it. If you want to use normal data, you can do something like this. You can delete this node, so you don't have to store this as JSON. Then you come to this default data loader, and here you don't load JSON anymore. No, you want to load binary actually. So load all input data, automatically detect by MIME type. The text splitting, we leave it once again at simple. And what we want to do right now is, we want to add metadata. So you press on metadata, we add property. We call this, for example, PDF, because this is from a PDF, of course, and the value, let's just call it COD for chain of draft. We can also write this small if we want. This is actually not that important. So we use the name as PDF and the value as COD. What we are doing right now is we come into our vector store and I will delete all my rows. We absurd these rows completely from scratch. I want to show you all the options that you have. So execute workflow. We use this chain of draft prompting once again. We send it out. You see right now this thing will get embedded once again. Boom, there it is. Now no longer as JSON. If we come on our table here, let's just see, I do think we need to reload this. Boom, there we have everything. Here you see the content, the metadata and the embeddings. And the coolest part about this metadata is right now that we can filter here. You see that the title is PDF and here COD. This means you can search and filter through this metadata. If you want to include, for example, more stuff in your vector database, for example, you would observe new things here. You can use new metadata so that your vector database is always organized. Now what you can do right now is, if you come on your Supabase vector store, you can use properties down here. So we do add option. We want to have a metadata filter. We press right here. Then the name is, I do think, PDF. And the value is COD for the chain of draft. And then we will search specifically for this metadata. And if other things are included, for example, into this vector store, we will ignore it. So you can filter through this. If you upload, for example, a lot of stuff, this can make every single thing a lot easier and more organized. The next thing that you can do is, you can also use re-rankings down here. If you activate this, you can use a re-ranker. Let's just close this down. If you press plus, you can use, for example, the Cohere re-ranker, and this re-ranks your search queries. You can get a little bit more accuracy, but most of the time it makes your application a bit slower and it is overkill. So not really needed right now. Let me know if I should include something here. The downfall of this Cohere ranker is obviously that you need to set up credentials, and I don't think that you can run this completely local. That's why we want to cancel this. So we don't use a re-ranker here. But keep in mind you can do this if you have some problems. And here this limit, I do think that you understand what this limit is. This limit is obviously the top K result. So number of top results to fetch from vector store. If you increase this to 8, you will get 8 chunks back. The default settings are always 4 and the default settings work most of the time perfectly fine. Right now I save it. And if I use this once again, obviously we will search only through the embeddings that have exactly this value. So this is how you can gain a little bit more control here. And I think I have forgotten to connect this. Right now I asked once again, what is COD? And the answer is that COD stands for chain of draft prompting, obviously. And the LLM also tells me like the accuracy, why this matters, and so on. And of course we will get all of this from our vector store. If you come here on the right side, you see once again, first of all the agent, then the simple memory, then the Ollama chat model, then the Supabase vector store, and on this Supabase vector store you can also see basically the chunks that you got back. These text chunks got basically back right here. If you come on embeddings, you see the embeddings that got sent out and come back. And here you also see the stuff that comes back from your OLAMA, and lastly the update of the simple memory. If you come back once again here on Supabase, you can obviously look into these chunks in more detail. But what I want to show you also is that you can also come here, for example, on this vector store, and then here on the right side you will actually see the full chunks. So here is 0, 1, 2, 3. These are basically our 4 chunks that we get. And you see this right here. You always get this metadata. You see this comes from PDF and with the value of COD. This is really practical here. Everything is included with this metadata. And now I want to show you something. Let's just assume that you would upload more data in this PDF. For example, with different metadata. I want to make a tiny small example. Everything that you have to do is to come on this default data loader. This time we give the name of, let's just say, test, and the value dog, for example. Then we upsert new data. And this time we use this Doggo PDF, so we press submit. The chunks get upserted, of course, in our vector database. Boom, there they are. And now you can actually find immediately in this metadata what stuff is included. If we make this actually a bit bigger, you see that these chunks come directly from PDF COD. And these chunks down here, they are of course our other file. And here the metadata is a bit of a mess because this is a really long name for a document. But let's just see, down here you see, these come directly from test dog. So let's just see, I do think here you can see it, test dog. And you can obviously use, for example, right here a new vector database. If you press here, for example, vector database, so the Supabase vector store, you can do basically the exactly same thing. You would connect, for example, to this OLAMA embeddings models. You can also throw the same thing on it right here. And then on this vector store, you would say, for example, use this tool for info about docs. And then down here you would use once again metadata, and this time the name is test and the value is here dog. And so you can basically filter through all of your data really efficient. This is really practical if you want to go into production of something, because obviously you will get better search queries if your vector database can get queried against different metadata. So as soon as you ask something about docs, this vector database will get triggered, and you only search the chunks that have the right metadata. And if you ask something about COD, you will actually trigger this vector store, and you will only get the relevant chunks from down here. This is a really cool use case if you just want to use one vector database and throw a lot of stuff in it. You can filter through this metadata. Let's just make one last test. Open chat. What are the different ways to train a dog? We send this out. I would expect that we trigger this vector database right now, and this tool will search for the right metadata inside of our vector store. And here you see it. This tool gets triggered. Obviously, it uses the same vector database, and we should only search through the chunks that have the right metadata, namely this data. And boom, then we have our answers, and obviously we get the right answers back. We have the positive reinforcement with food, toys and so on, we have the balance training, we have the yank and crank trainer, and then some key tips. And I can assure you this is the right information from my PDF. And if we come on this vector store, you can basically see the chunks that we get back, and obviously we use just this metadata. And I want to tell you why this is so valuable. If you create a vector database, for example, for your company, obviously you would include, for example, data for sales, for marketing, or for different kinds of customer and so on. And if you do this the right way, and if you take your time to use the right metadata, your query will then actually run a lot faster if you build it this way. Because obviously your search query can be more precise and faster, because it does not have to search through every single line in this vector store. So this can add accuracy and speed to your application. So please, give this a shot. Now you understand metadata, you should obviously also use it if it makes sense for you. So obviously you can play with this around, you can make a lot of really interesting things right here. Give this a shot because we can do obviously really cool stuff right here. And over the next videos we will try to make this a bit bigger, because n8n can not only do RAG, it can do a lot more. We can also use normal databases, so tables, we can send mails, we can do a lot more, just like I told you. See you in the next one. This video is just a quick tip. I want to show you that I can share these workflows with you. Obviously, it makes more sense that you build these workflows yourself, so that you learn it and that you understand it. But you can, of course, share these workflows with other people. You can use my workflows, and that's also the reason why you can come on these templates and use workflows from different persons. I want to show you how this works. Basically, what I can do right here is to press on these three dots, and then I press download. In my downloads, I have this Supabase reg course test.json, so this is a JSON file. And in this JSON file are obviously all the information stored. So if I press right here to open this up, you can see that this is the JSON. And here is basically everything stored. You see the name is Supabase reg course test. Here we find the nodes with the parameters, the options and so on. This is basically the type that we are using. Here are the positions of the different nodes, so this is the position of the first node. Here you find the ID, then the name, when chat message received, the webhook ID, the first system message, obviously here we used none. And this is basically how all these informations got stored. And as soon as you have this, you can obviously import it to your NNN. I throw this on my local machine, so on my desktop, boom. Then I can come into my NNN. And if I press on personal, create new workflow, I can press on these three dots once again, I import from file, and then I can simply press open here, and boom, this thing is included, and everything is on the same place as previously with all the settings that I have used. So obviously, like I told you, it makes more sense to create this for yourself from scratch. But if you want to have exactly these agents, I will also upload this JSON so that you can import it if you want to save some time, for example. This works completely the same as in ComfyUI. You already saw in Comfy that your workflows basically get saved as JSON and you can export and import them. In the last video we took a look at vector databases. You already understand vector databases. They are of course perfect if you want to observe, for example, a lot of text. So gigantic amount of text. And this text will get splitted, stored in the vector database, and then of course you can browse these PDFs, these files, whatever. But in this video we need to talk about SQL, because SQL is also really powerful. SQL works a tiny bit different. We will no longer do a vector search, we can do a specific query and we can get the data. And this data will be stored, for example, into tables. So we have, for example, a table with a lot of different rows. In these rows can be, for example, names, dates, and so on. And you will get the exact same names, dates, customer numbers, and so on back. Another use case for SQL is obviously if you sell products, for example. If you have the product with the product name, maybe also a description for the product, and the prices for the products, SQL is absolutely perfectly suited for that. You will not use a vector database for this information. You need to use SQL. I will make an example with like name, phone numbers, and emails, but obviously this works also for prices, products, and similar things. So if you want to store specific data into a table, we should use SQL, and we can also use this obviously with Supabase. We dive immediately back into NNN. This thing, we will save this for right now. We will come back later to this application. So save this, then we come on overview, because I want to show you the basics of SQL. We start out right here once again, and the first trigger is once again an on-form submission. But obviously you can also do other things. We call this, for example, test. Also the description I want to run with test, and now we want to insert stuff in our database. And we can use here, for example, name. The element type is here text, and here, for example, your name. We want to add another element. For example, email. Once again text, and the placeholder, your name. And lastly, we want to add, for example, let's just say phone number. We can also leave this a text, or we can even use numbers right here. To make this as simple as possible, we use also here text, and we type in your phone number. And we want to make here two things as required. For example, the name, and also the email, and the phone number is not really necessary. People can give this if they want to. So boom, right now we can use this on-form submission to write stuff into our SQL database. And the next thing that we want to add is obviously, we press plus and we want to have, of course, Supabase once again. So we use Supabase, and this time no longer the Supabase vector store, we want to have the standard Supabase tool. And here you have a few options. You can create a row, you can delete a row, you can get rows, you can get many rows, or you can update rows. For this specific form, it's obvious that we want to create a row. Boom. And right now we need to give, of course, the table name. But before we can do this, we need to make a table, of course. The first thing is obviously that you need to connect yourself, for example with this course test. We are already connected from the last video, and right now we need to make a table into Supabase. In order to do that, we come here on Supabase. This is our vector database, but we want to make something like this, for example. And in order to create such a table or such a database, we come on the left side, we press on database. Then we want to come to tables, and here we can simply press new table. Boom. Now we need to give this a name. Let's just call this course test. Then the description is optional. You can do this if you want to. We can also leave the rest at the default settings, but the important things come down here. Here are the columns. We always have here name, type, the default value, and primary. The first two things I would simply leave them at this default settings, because this thing will give it automatically an ID, and we will also give a timestamp, and the timestamp is automatically at now. So Supabase will do the heavy lifting for you and add some timestamps, but what you want to do next is to press add column. Then in the middle here you can press on it, and here you can simply search for the stuff that you want to do. And here you can use a lot of different things. ENT2 is basically a standard number with 2 bytes. You can also use JSON, but for most of the fields, a normal text field will be right. So you simply press on text right here. And then the last thing down here is null. This null simply stands for an empty object, so there is nothing included. This is actually not the number 0, so null basically means also null in German, and we don't want to include any numbers here. Then the next thing is, of course, we add a column once again. Here we type in, of course, the mail. Also this should be text. Then once again, add column. And here we want to have the phone, for example. And also this, we simply leave this a text to make all of this really easy. And if you type in something here by accident, you can obviously simply delete this. You can also leave this at empty, or you press once again set as null. Boom. And there we are. What you can do right now is to simply press save here, and then you will get your new table. So adding the columns and so on, boom, right now we have our new table included. If we are here on tables, you can basically see it right here. We have called this course test with 5 columns and everything will be empty. If you come on the left side on table editor, you can come here on this course test, and here is your empty table. And you can immediately see that this is not a vector database, because you obviously have no vectors and nothing. So, of course, you can simply search for this stuff or insert stuff. If you already have data on your PC, you can import this from a CSV by pressing right here. And then you can upload a CSV file. If you already have a CSV file, for example, from your clients, and you have name, mail and phone included, you can upload your entire CSV file, and then you can query against it. We will talk about these queries in a minute. But what we want to do is, of course, first of all, to upload stuff in this database. We assume that you don't have like any context or similar stuff included. I just want to show you everything how it works. But if you already have a lot of data on your PC, simply press import data from CSV and upload it right here, and these things will get included. What we want to do next is, of course, to come back into our NIN. Then we press here on create a row, and what we do right now is we search, of course, to course test. Here everything is basically correctly set up. The resource is row, the operation is create. It's of course this course test that we used, and then the data to send, we want to define it below, so we press on that field. What we want to use is of course the name, and then we need to give a value. This value we need to map this in a minute. I want to show you how all of this is working. But before we do this, we add a second value. The second value is of course then the mail. And then the third value would be, for example, let's just see the phone. And then the field values, we want to give this via a dynamic JavaScript variable. So what we do right now is to press save. I simply press execute workflow so that we get some test data. And I call this right now Arnie as the name. Then I give an email address and a random number and I press submit. Right now this data will come through. And if you press right here, you basically see that we only sent empty stuff right here. So basically nothing will get included right here. We just have empty stuff. But of course we want to have everything included right here. And in order to include this, you can simply come here on scheme, you scroll down a tiny bit, then you find of course the name, and the name is of course this right here, a dynamic JavaScript variable. Then the next thing is of course the mail, and the mail you find the mail down here, boom, email. And the last thing is of course the phone number, so you can also include this phone number down here, boom. If we press execute step right now, you see that we will actually send this data to our table. And if we come back to Supabase right now once again, I want to reload this for a moment, boom, then you see that we have it. So we have the name, we have the email address, and we have the number, and the first thing was empty. Of course you can delete this stuff by simply pressing on it, delete 2 rows, delete, boom. Then you can come back once again here, we press save, and we can do this once again. For example, this time, Peter, beat@beat.com, and some random numbers. Submit. This runs through, and our data will get included here as soon as I reload. We need to wait always a tiny bit, boom. So here you see the ID is free because I have deleted actually 2 IDs. Then here the created at with the timestamps. Then the name is Peter, the mail is beat@beat.com, and the phone is this random number right here. This is how you can insert stuff, of course, into a SQL database. This works really easy. Of course, what you can also do is you can make this active, for example. Then you can come on this table, you can come on this production URL. The production URL, you can actually copy these. And if you throw this in right here, for example, you can also send this to other people so that they can register themselves here. Let's just assume that you want to collect like email information or something else on a product that you are selling. Obviously, this only works if you have a hosted server. If not, this only works on your local machine. To test this out, I simply want to do this once again with my name, so Arnold Oberleiter, then of course the email and a random phone number, then we press submit. And also here we should get this data, boom, this time it was like really fast. So you see, this is how easy we can add SQL databases. And now I want to show you something really cool. Obviously, you can use, for example, an AI agent, and this AI agent can have access to your database. And it will be really precise. This works a lot more precisely than, of course, a vector database. If we simply press plus, we want to have, for example, an AI agent right now. So AI agent. Of course, we want to trigger this via chat, but obviously you can also trigger with other stuff. So we want to have another trigger. This time we do have a chat trigger, so on message, boom. Right now we connect this message with our AI agent. We use a local model because we have obviously here like data from potential clients. That's why we use once again this Olama chat model. We use a model, let's just use Quen3b. And then we use a tool. And this time, of course, it's once again a Supabase tool. But not Supabase Vector Store, it's of course once again the Supabase tool. And this time we are once again connected with our account with course test. Then the resources row, this works. But we don't want to create stuff, no. We actually want to get stuff this time. Then we want to give the table name or ID. It's of course course test. Or actually we do this a bit different. Because I don't want to do get, I want to do get many. So that we can basically get all of our information. Then you can set obviously a limit if you want to. We leave this limit at 50. Obviously right now we only have 2 things here included. But you can also suck in like 50 entities right here. Then the filter is built manually and the must watch is any filter. What you can do right now is to query your database. I can ask, for example, like, what's the phone of Arnold or what's the mail of Peter? So actually we save this, we open chat. What is the mail of Peter? If I send this out, our model will query our database, and if you have problems, we should set a system prompt, but I would guess that this thing is also smart enough without a system prompt. Okay, and the first query did not work. I guess we need to make this better in a system prompt, or we can obviously also tell this down here. That's basically what I did. So what is the mail of Peter? Search database, and then our database gets queried. If you want to fix this without asking, of course you can add a system message right here. We will talk about this in later videos in detail. But what I want to show you is that we get here beat@beat.com. That's obviously this here, beat@beat.com. So you can query your database. And right now I want to show you something else. You can also press plus right here, and you can include here once again a Supabase tool. If we use here the Supabase tool, and if you include here, let's just see, resources row, this time it's create. We want to select the database, it's of course course test. Right now we want to define below, we want to integrate the name. Here we let the AI decide. We want to add the mail. We want to also let the AI decide. And we want to add the phone. And we also let the AI decide what's basically what. Right now this is connected. And what we can do right now is, let's just say we talk with this AI agent, for example, in a different chat interface. Maybe you want to talk with your agent right here on a public chat somewhere in this interface. And you tell, for example, add this to database Sarah. Then we type in a number. The thing will find automatically out that this is the phone number, even if I don't type it in sequence. And then lastly, sarah@sarah.com. I can simply send this out, and right now this thing will get stored automatically. If we come back in our NLN, obviously you cannot see the query here, but if you come on executions, this will run here through. Let's just wait a second. There we have it, the query comes through. Let's just see here, if you come on editor, you cannot see anything, but if you come on executions, you see this execution, because this time we triggered outside from an NLN. And you can see right here that we have everything here included in this chat. So this will be saved at ID 5, with this timestamp, the name is Sarah, and then you have mail and phone. And if we come basically into our database, you see that we have the name as Sarah, then the mail, and the phone. And right now you maybe think that this did not work, and I have to tell you, you are obviously right. And I want to show you why. I would guess that our local LLM is not smart enough in order to do this. And I want to show you a quick fix. I would guess the GPT OSS 20B is a lot smarter to do this. So what we are doing right now is, we do this again. We come on these executions, and I want to run the exact same prompt, just in order to check and to see if actually the OSS model is smarter than this Quen model. This Quen model made here a really dumb mistake. I want to actually delete this right now. So delete, boom. Because these models, they should be smart enough if we let the AI decide. I do think this is on Quen. A 8B model is maybe too stupid for this. This is the downfall if you use really small open source models. Right now we will give OpenAI a chance. A 20B model should be able to understand this, come on. And tada, there you see it. This model seems to be obviously a lot smarter. So this model found out that the name is Sarah, that obviously the phone is this number and the email is this down here. And if we come into our database right now, you see that we have Sarah with the mail and also with the phone number. So you see the system was smart enough to figure this out automatically. Most of the time you should eventually also not like sort this by comma or something like this, and then it should also work better. I want to make one last test with this small model, because I do think that even Quen should be able to figure this out if we do this a tiny bit different. I want to make a similar thing here, so add this to database. The name should be obvious. Then for example, the phone is, let's just use another phone this time. And lastly, a little bit of a different email. This time it's Sarah without H on everything. And we sent this out, for example, with this query. So you see I added a little bit more details, but it's also not in sequence. Because our sequence is name, mail and phone. And this sequence is basically name, phone and mail. And even the mail basically is not included. I hope that this model finds out that this thing is the mail. If not, I would be a little bit surprised here. Name, phone, email, and also in our database it's name, phone and email. So I do think this works right now. And what you can do is, of course, you can also get all of your contacts. For example, list all of my contacts with mail and phone from my database. We can basically query and we can get up to 50 answers back. So I would guess that we get Peter, Arnold, Sarah and Sarah. We get our query. I do think that also the small Quen model is able to do this. And let's just see. First is Peter with pete@pete.com. This is the number. Then we have Arnold Oberleiter or Arnold Oberleiter. This is basically German with the email and the phone. Then we have Sarah and Sarah without a H. So you see this thing is working. And obviously if you have other contexts, you can simply come right here, you press on insert, and you can insert new rows, you can insert new columns, you can insert entire databases with a CSV, and you can add or even remove data. If you press once again plus, I just need to show you this, come on. Supabase, the tool of course. Row, this time it's delete. We use the course test. And what we want to do here is we want to also set a condition, and the condition is this time name, because I only remember these names, equals and we let the AI decide. And right now I can basically ask, delete Sarah from my database. We send this out. We trigger delete row in Supabase. Sarah has been successfully deleted and so on. And if we come into our database, you see, boom, that Sarah is done. And the interesting part is that this Sarah is still there. Because I have used Sarah without a H, so even this small model was smart enough to delete the right Sarah from our database. And this is basically how you can use SQL databases. And in the next video we will go on and we will automate a bit more. And by the way, you see that here are some more queries running because I was impatient and some of the requests are still running. In this video we will go on and we will actually make an email automation tool or an email automation agent out from this agent. This agent can obviously add data to our data table. It can delete data and it can get data. So what you can do is basically you can add new contacts, or you can tell to this thing later, for example, send a mail to like Sarah. This thing will search Sarah and then send automatically an email. What you can also do is, of course, you can combine all of this stuff. I just want to name this right now, for example, SQL mail agent, for example. So before we build this, I want to show you something. Obviously, you can connect this thing. If you would simply copy these 3 nodes right here, boom, and you come on personal, and you come to your rec agent, you can obviously also add this thing down here. So you can simply connect these 3 nodes also to this AI agent. And also this agent can right now simply query your contacts. It can search in a database, it can query your contacts, it can add new contacts and so on. But to simply make this easier and more understandable, we will simply delete them and come back into our first agent. So leave without saving. We want to have our SQL mail agent. What we do right now is we press plus, obviously, and we need to add, of course, a Gmail tool or whatever mail provider you want to use. We use this Gmail tool. What we want to do is we want to connect with our Gmail account. And in order to do that, like you see, I am already connected, but I would guess you are not connected. That's why we will create a new credential here. So create new credential. I call this course test. Then you need to have a OAuth redirect URL, a client ID and a client secret. And in order to get this, you can open up this documentation. Here they basically tell you that you need to go to the Google Cloud Console. Here you need to press on console. On this console you need to, you have to make a few clicks, but we will do this step by step together. You come here on this upper left corner and you press new project. We call this, for example, course test. Then of course we press create. This right now is in German, but don't worry. In English, like it reads nearly completely the same. Maybe I can change here also the language. Settings, English, save. Right now we are on the same page, come on. What you want to do right now is to go into your course test, so simply press on it. Right now we are inside of course test, then we press on the left side and you come to API and services and you want to come to the library. And here you want to search for the Gmail API. You press on the Gmail API, you press also right here, and here you want to enable the Gmail API. As soon as this thing is enabled, you come on OAuth client secret. You press get started, you give this a name, once again course test, and you give your email, you press next. This should be external, you press next. Once again your email, next, and you agree, continue, create. Right now we need to configure our OAuth client, so we press right here. The application type is a web application, web client 1 is okay. And this thing is important. You need to have an authorized redirect URL. So you press right here. You come back to NAN, of course. You can delete this, boom. And here you see the OAuth redirect URL. You can copy this. You can come back here and you add this URL down here. And then you press create. Right now you will get your client ID. You can copy this client ID. You can come back and we throw in the client ID here, boom. And then you press OK. Right now you can come here on edit and here you will find your client secret. You will actually copy your client secret. We come back once again and down here we will add our client secret. So delete this old thing, insert the new one, and right now you can test if this thing is working. Most likely it will not work and I will show you in a minute why. But we press save, maybe you have luck. So you press sign in with Google, you press on your account. Boom, it is not working. Why is this not working? Sometimes we have to add basically a little bit of audience. And on audience you can use a test user. And here you simply use your email, you press save, you actually have to press save twice. And as soon as your test user is included, you can come back once again, you press sign in with Google once again, you use your account, and then you can basically go on. Boom. You want to give access to everything on Google, you press OK once again, and then you're basically connected. So you see this thing is green right now. And right now you can use the Google service right here. And if you want to add more APIs, obviously you can press right here. You come on APIs and services, you come on the library, and here you can also include like Google Drive, for example. And you can also include the Google Drive API in this project, but for us it's right now not needed. We just want to send some emails. So the credentials are course test, the tool description is set automatically, the resource is message, the operation is send. And here you want to type in the email that you want to send to, but obviously we want to query first of all through this database and send it automatically to the right mail. So what we want to do is we let the AI decide. Then the subject, you can obviously use a subject, but we also let the AI decide. Then the email type, you can use HTML if you want to have fancy formatting, but I like text. And then the message, we also let the AI decide. And lastly down here, you can basically exclude NaN attribution, but before we do this, I want to show you how the NaN attribution basically looks like. Right now, this thing can send emails, and I would guess that it has some problems to do this because the system prompt is not perfect. We will talk about the system prompt in the next video, but for this video, we will do this as simple as possible. And I also want on purpose to work with a local model that is small to simply test if this thing is smart enough in order to do this. So right now we need to be a little bit more descriptive, because obviously we have no system prompt yet. We can do something like this. Search my database. The name is Arnie. Okay, Arnold Oberleiter. I have my full name. So right now we are really descriptive. After the next video you can be less descriptive, because we will bake most of it in the system prompt. What I did right now is the following. Search my database. The name is Arnold Oberleiter. I want his mail. As soon as you have this, send him a mail with send a message in Gmail and tell him thank you for the great course. You see that I obviously have some typos and so on included. I want to see if this thing is smart enough with a relatively simple and stupid prompt. I want to send this out, and then we will see if we can trigger these tools one after another. I want to have get many with my email, and then we want to trigger the send mail tool. I tweaked the prompt a tiny bit, but indeed it seems to work perfectly. First we triggered the get many rows, then we triggered the Gmail tool. You can see this here in sequence. Of course we start with this Olama chat model, this was basically my prompt. Then we use get many rows from Supabase, and you see as the response basically that also my mail is included down here. Then we use once again the Olama chat model, and then we use send a message in Gmail. And you see the message goes exactly to this email. arnio93@gmail.com. And lastly, once again, Olama does the heavy lifting with our mail. And the thing tells me the email has been successfully sent to Arnold and so on. And it says thank you for the great course. What we can do actually is to come in my Gmail to see if this is actually happening or not. And indeed, I have this thank you. This comes of course from my email to my email, but this worked really perfectly. Thank you for the great course. And then you see this right here. This is the NaN attribution that I have told you. This email was sent automatically with NaN. But obviously, yeah, most likely you want to exclude this. I want to show you how you can exclude this. And then we will test this once again to see if also the exclusion is working. I copy this prompt for later. Then we come on the send message tool. We can come down here. We press on append NaN attribution. We throw this off because I don't want to have this included. We clear everything here. Then basically we insert this prompt once again. We send this out. Right now the agent is working. It triggered the Supabase tool, and maybe you can also hear that my GPU is firing up because while recording this takes a lot of resources. And right now I would guess that the agent is crafting the mail and triggering Gmail. And boom, there you see it. It worked. Now lastly, Olama will answer me here in this chat, and it will hopefully tell me that it worked. Boom! Right now you see that it worked. And you can follow here everything once again. This was the prompt, this was Supabase. On Supabase also my mail is included down here. Then the Olama chat model thinks again a bit. And then we send it, of course, to this email. And if we come into my Gmail, I got once again a mail for me. And you see, I have this mail. Yeah, this was here not perfect, your name. because I have not told that it should sign off like by Arnie or something else, but you see that the NLN attribution is no longer there. And of course you can be more specific, and you can do this either in this prompt, so you can tell here sign off with Arnie or whatever, but what you want to do most likely is to set a really great system prompt. And I want to show you this in the next video, because as soon as you set a good system prompt, you have to be no longer that descriptive in this prompt. You can simply ask, send a mail to XYZ, tell him thank you, and then the mail will be perfectly crafted and every single tool will get executed the right way. So see you in the next one as soon as we talk about making a great system prompt for our application. And then the application should basically work even with bad prompts. In this video we try to improve this application by giving it a system prompt. You already understand how this should work. You can press on this agent, you come down, you press on system prompt, you can come on expression, and you can also make this big, so that you can include your system prompt basically here. And you already know kinda how to build the system prompts. You should give a role, you should give a goal, you should give the tools that it has access, or the MCP tools. We are not at MCP yet, we will talk about these MCPs in the next section because we need to do this step by step. You want to give the rules, the style, the output format, eventually some examples, and lastly some variables. Here you already got a small little example. So what we are doing right now is we create a system prompt, and we will also use, for example, ChatGPT in order to create a system prompt. In order to do that, we can simply copy all of this. But before I copy this, I want to actually delete the smileys, because the smileys, yeah, they are bad. We don't need them. You should never include smileys in a system prompt. This is just for illustration purposes, so that you can see it a bit better and understand it a bit better. So the first thing is we delete the smileys. Then I will simply copy this whole system prompt. It goes until here. So copy. Then we come into a random LLM. I just use ChatGPT. And inside ChatGPT we do something like this. I want to build a system prompt that uses this format. And then you simply include all of this. Optimize my prompt. Then I copy once again this right here. Then the role, assistant for contact management and emails. The goal, organize contacts and sending emails. Then the tools. Here you need to use the exact tools that you have here. So create a row in Supabase, delete a row in Supabase, get many rows, and so on. In order to get them, you can simply copy them right here. Use this to create contacts in my database. Next we have delete. Use this to delete. Then we have get, and we use this to get contacts. And lastly, send a message in Gmail. Use this to send emails to contacts from my database. Then the rules, keep it short and concise. If I ask for sending a mail, always check my contacts with get many rows in Supabase first and try to send it to that mail. Then the style. The language is English, then the tone and the structure, then the output format is text, then the examples, we don't really need to have examples, and the variables, we just use date and time, and here we use a JavaScript variable, and we type in $now. ChatGPT will help you with this if you don't have any clue how to do this. Boom. And on this right here I also want to include, for example, sign off my mails with Arnie. Boom. Now we send this out. I do think the system prompt on its own should work, but we want that ChatGPT is basically making this a bit better for us. Maybe I have some typos and so on, so I do think we will get our system prompt. Seems to work for right now, but I do think I want to have here everything in Markdown. This is a bit of a mess. Give me everything in one Markdown block. No emojis. I do think this should be fine right now. So we copy all of this. We come back into our NRN, we come to this agent, we make this once again big, we include this, and now we take a closer look. First we start with the role, we can delete this, seems to be fine. The goal is also fine, then the tools seem to be fine, the rules are also okay, the style is okay, but we want to have text and not markdown. Also here, no markdown is needed. We don't want to have any specific email format. I do think the format is fine, but if you want to have something specific, you can also leave this. But I don't want to give an example. If you have a specific email format, of course you can include this. And the last thing, date and time. I also want to include this once again right now, here by hand, is here. Of course, 2 curly brackets, $, now. And then you have date and time basically included automatically. I do think we have right now a fine system prompt. If you want to refine the system prompt, you can eventually also copy these and throw it, for example, into platform.openai.com. And here you see that you have a GPT-5 prompt optimizer. What you can do here is you can simply include your system prompt and you can press optimize, and then this thing will take its time and it will optimize your system prompt. And if you have problems to coming up with good system prompts, even with the material that I gave you, you can also come on platform.openai.com, and here you see basically this developer message. And if you press on this thing right here, you can describe what you want to do, and then this thing will spit out a developer message for you. For example, a mail assistant with the Gmail tool. This is just a stupid example. Obviously, you should be more precise right here. But this thing will create a system prompt for you. This is also relatively fast. So I do think you should absolutely use LLMs in order to help you generate the system prompts. I think the thing that we did works best. So use basically the materials that I gave you and use ChatGPT for this. But if you are lazy or something like this, you can also try to make your first rough draft with this thing right here. Also here you see that you have some short prompting included with examples and so on. And later for refinement, you can absolutely use this GPT-5 prompt optimizer. And this optimizer basically tells you what you can make better. Here is everything included. So first we start with a role, and GPT-5 tells us that instead of 3 hashtags, we should eventually use 2. So there you see it, 2 hashtags, and we have right here 3. And this prompt optimizer thinks that it would make sense to use just 2 for better readability. You can always see it here. Then here you see that also this got a little bit changed up. If you press on it, the role description was consolidated. Redundant wording was removed and focus was clarified for a more concise introduction. So you see this should be a little bit more concise than my role right here. But what I want to do, I want to simply roll with this one. If it makes problems, I will obviously use the prompt from ChatGPT. So always take a look at this. The coolest part is that you get all the reasoning here included. And if you think that you like this, you can obviously just copy this and also throw it in your system prompt. So you would delete the old one and use the new one. But like I told you, I do think that we are fine with this one right here. Maybe we could delete, for example, these hashtags and just use 2. But just to prove you that even this should work, I want to roll with this. But I would recommend you to always use this optimizer and just simply try to read for yourself what ChatGPT is telling you. Here, for example, they tell you that the tool description was a little bit refined. Here, these rules got a little bit refined. So take a look at the reasoning and eventually use the optimized prompt. But I roll with this. Now let's just see if the system prompt is working. So we press save. The first thing that I want to test is to add an email address, of course, right here. So open workflow, add to contacts. Once again, we want to use a Peter at beat.com and some random numbers. We work here once again with a small model to check if the output is improving by giving a good system prompt. We send this out. Here you see that on every query we send also our gigantic system prompt, and that's why the output quality should improve. Peter has been successfully added to your contacts. Here are his details, name Peter, email this right here, and the phone is this. Let me know if you like to send him a message or something. And this thing also calls me Arnie right now because obviously it understands that I am Arnie because I sign off my emails with Arnie. It did not send an email because I have not told it. It simply added Peter to my contacts. So what we are doing right now is we want to send once again a mail to me, but we do this in a really like vague way. So send a mail to Arnold Oberleiter, tell him thank you for the great AI course, also be kind to him. We send this out, and right now, because of our great system prompt, I would guess that this thing is able to call the right tools in sequence, and it will also use the right tone, it will be sharp, it will be concise, and I hope it works. Even with this small model. Boom, you see, the first thing worked. It used get many rows, because our system prompt is telling this. First, it did not work in the last video. You saw in the last video I had to add all this context into my normal prompt. But because we have a good system prompt right now, it will get the context directly from the system prompt. And now I would guess that we sent a mail that is really well crafted. Boom, the mail got sent, and I would guess this thing tells me that everything worked. And indeed, I got a mail. And the mail tells me, "Dear Arnold, thank you for the excellent AI course. I truly enjoy the insights and look forward to applying them. Your expertise is greatly appreciated. Warm regards, Arnie." So you see, everything worked perfect because of our system prompt. And that's basically the power of the system prompt. And what you need to do next is, of course, to test this out. You need to test if this thing is working. If you have some problems, of course, fix them. Maybe you can also delete here this MCP, because obviously this is not needed. You can also tell, for example, only send one mails. You can simply see for yourself if you have problems with something, and you can always iterate the system prompt. Prompting is not a thing that you do once. Prompting is an iterative process. You start as short as possible and you add more stuff if needed, but try to keep this concise, because obviously this gets always sent to your local LLM, and then the processing time can increase a tiny bit. And this is basically how you can write really structured and perfect system prompts for your AI agents, and obviously this works for every single agent that you build. Not only for SQL, this will also work for your RAG agent, and this will also work if you want to combine these two agents. So obviously you can also connect vector databases to the other agent, or you can connect the SQL databases here, you can connect Gmail here, you can make these applications however you want, thanks to the system prompt. But remember, don't overdo it, don't add redundant tools, don't add too many tools. As soon as you add like 10 or 20 tools, this thing will make mistakes, especially if you use just a small model. If you go, for example, with the GPT OSS model, you have a little bit more wiggle room, because the models get smarter the bigger they are. But all in all, you understand how these things are working. I see you, of course, in the next video, where I want to give you an overview of some things that you can do, but I think you have all the basics nailed down right now. Until now, you saw a lot of different options and things that you can build. We took most of our attention on databases, because you can use SQL with normal databases, so with tables, with Supabase, and you can host every single thing locally. Obviously, you can also process mails. You can upsert stuff also with different on-form submissions and a lot more. And you also saw how you can use vector databases, how you can include metadata, and how you can upsert stuff into a vector database. And obviously, this is just the tip of the iceberg. These automations, they can be endless. You can use different triggers. You can start, for example, with an on-schedule trigger and do something like every day, once a day, or something similar. Obviously, you can also make email classifications or entire automations. I want to give you a brief overview of this workflow. So first, we do have an email trigger. This knows triggers when a new email arrives in your Gmail inbox. Then we have an AI classification. This agent analyzes the email's content to determine if it's a sponsorship request. It looks for knowledge like sponsor, partnerships, collaboration, etc. So this means as soon as an email comes through, I will use a local AI model, here you can see Olama, and we will classify this email. So this thing finds out if I got a sponsorship deal or not. If it's a sponsorship, we have this if node. So if it's true, it basically comes into this node, and if it's false, it comes into this node. If it's not a sponsorship, my mails will get labeled as important. And if it's a sponsorship, basically an AI model will generate a draft as reply. And then my draft gets automatically saved and I can just press send. This saves me a lot of time. I get a lot of sponsorship requests for my YouTube channel and normally I don't accept them. So this thing always makes a rough draft for me, tells the sponsor thank you but I don't want it, and if it's not a sponsorship request, my mails get labeled. And you need to think for yourself what you want to automate, especially with these local models. I would not necessarily give OpenAI access to all my mails, for example, and that's why we use Olama here as the chat model. So obviously you can automate a lot here. And I want to show you something else, because you already understand all these basics, you know how you can set up these basics. Right now you should basically come into templates. So down here, templates. And you should basically search for yourself what you want to use. If you come on view all templates, simply type in the stuff that you need, the stuff that you want, and try to play a little bit around with these templates. Obviously, if you use like stuff with Telegram, it is possible that it's not working because you have not started and then with a handle. In order to do that, type in --handle to start, and then it should also basically work. So if you want to use Telegram or webhooks, you need to start it with a handle. I already told you this. So there is no point that I show you like every single automation under the sun, because obviously you find so many. You can find them for marketing, for social media, for sales, for support, and a lot more. Take a look, you will grasp them, and also take a look at the examples that NA directly gives you. Because obviously they also tell you how you can automate your calendar, and they even tell you this in a nice little video. So there is no point for me to telling you all of this. I want to tell you in the next section, of course, some special workflows. So long story short, I would recommend you to play a little bit, to try to figure this stuff out, to set up some workflows that are important for you. Maybe you want to do something with your emails, maybe you want to do something with your calendar. And I would strongly recommend you to do something with databases. And also here with these databases. If you type in, for example, into these templates, so right here, RAG, you will find that you have a lot of options in order to use these RAG pipelines. If you press on some of them, here you find, for example, a 100% local RAG system. This is basically relatively similar than the stuff that we have built, I see right here. We also use here our own form submission to store stuff in Qdrant. This is also a nice vector database. I would recommend you to stick with Supabase. But here's actually another AI agent that can also use RAG. Obviously for upserting stuff you can also use, for example, Google Drive. You can do a file upload, then download your file and then insert it in a vector database, and here you would obviously also use Supabase, and then you have the same pipeline running as they show you right here. So just use Supabase here and you can automatically upload your stuff from Google Drive. This basically means with this file uploading that every time as soon as you upload something into Google Drive, it will get stored automatically in your vector database, and then you can query against it with a normal RAG agent. So obviously the possibilities are completely endless. Take a look, try to build, and of course we will do some really interesting stuff in the next section. But before we do this, I want to give you a recap in the next video. In this section you learned the basics of agentic AI, and we used NA10. The first thing that you need to do is to install Node.js on your machine. Then we can install NA10 globally. You can run simply a few commands in your terminal, so in the Node.js command prompt, and it should be running. If you are on a Mac, simply use the same commands but include sudo as soon as you start. If you have problems with the installation, it could be because of a Node version that is not matching with NA10. But of course you can manage these versions. Then we took a look at all of these basics. You understand that NA10 always starts with some sort of trigger. It can be chat, it can be an email that comes in, it can be Google Drive, it can be a non-form submission, it can be by clicking, it can be whatever. After the trigger, some kind of action should occur. If we trigger by chat, obviously, the chat should go most likely into an AI agent, and the AI agent should do something for us. One thing that the AI agent could do is, for example, to query a database. But before you can use a database, you need to set one up. And in order to set a database up, I think the best way is to install Docker locally. It's really easy. And inside of Docker you should install Supabase, because with Supabase you can use SQL databases, so normal tables, and you can also use vector databases, and everything works on your machine. It's really clean and somehow easy to use. Yes, I know you need to follow a few steps, but as soon as everything is running, it should work. After everything is set up, we can include it in our workflows. You have to connect Supabase to your NA10, you need to have your secret key and also the port, and you will find everything either directly in Supabase or in the .env on your local machine. After everything is connected, you can use, for example, a vector database. You just copy this code snippet, throw it into your Supabase, then you have a vector database and you can connect it. You can upsert stuff into this vector database, and embed everything. As soon as you embed stuff, you can also add metadata, for example. This makes it easy to query against your database and always find the right chunks really easy. So you can upload a ton of stuff and everything will be organized. And you see all of these chunks also in your database, and you can like delete them by hand or do whatever you want in this vector database. You can also increase or decrease the top K and do all the fancy stuff that I showed you. Besides vector databases, you understand that you can use a table inside of your Supabase instance. And this is perfect if you want to store like contacts, products with prices, so everything that is a list should go into these tables. You can either upload your own table, so if you have for example a gigantic amount of products, just upload them, or you can upload them via a on-form submission if you want to type in manually, or if you want to share this on-form submission so that people can register themselves and everything gets stored. Or you can also use an AI agent, tell the AI agent store this into my database and it will get stored. Obviously you can also then query against this database. And you can get information about products, about people, about whatever. If you include people, you can also go on and make an email automation. You can say search Arnie and send him a mail to say thank you. And then your database will get searched, you will get the email, and you can also trigger the next tool that is, for example, a Gmail tool. Everything that you have to do is to connect your Gmail account. And you do this in the Google Cloud Console. Of course, you can also combine this. You can use vector databases and SQL databases on one agent. You can use normal email classifications or automation that answer instant or save drafts. And you have a lot of possibilities. But if you make bigger workflows, obviously you need to craft a detailed system prompt. You give role, behavior, maybe some examples, and so on. And you can also use LLMs in order to help you craft the system prompts. We will use Markdown as format. So all in all, I do think that you have really learned a lot in this section. And I want to tell you what learning is. Learning is same circumstance but different behavior. If you have not running NLN locally yet, you have not learned. Only if you try to do some of the things from the section you have learned. And briefly I want to tell you of course what really good learners do. Obviously, they learn together, because more people know more than few people. And we could reach this goal by you sharing this course. And if other people also get value from this course, they will describe the value to you, because you have told them. Thank you for that, and I'll see you of course in the next section. And in the next section we will dive into special workflows. Special workflows that you will not find under this N8N workflows. Because obviously you can search through these N8N workflows and find whatever you want. But we will do something special. We will connect Conf UI, we will use the model context protocol, we will use LM Studio as front end, and a lot more. So see you in the next one, because also the next one is a really exciting section.